Hey class, I wanted to give a little breakdown of this project. You're going to be doing a graphic essay. So with a graphic essay, it's kind of like it sounds. You're going to be using more visuals and blurbs, sort of like a comic book type thing. And this one only has to be 2 pages, so it's not very difficult. So I explain what a graphic essay is there. Here I talk about the big picture. It says, for this, a graphic essay, you will choose a California writer and detail his or her contributions to the Golden State. What do you mean by contributions? So there's a couple of ways you can think about this. First, you could discuss the writer's contributions to the California literary canon. So canon is kind of like this imaginary collection of all the great works. So if you were going to focus on that, you would basically focus on the writer's literature, right? Their plays, poems, novels, things like that. Or if the writer helped elicit some social change, like John Steinbeck, you could write about that, or maybe both. It is up to you. So the first thing you're going to do is choose a California writer. I started compiling a list here, but then I found a page right here that links, let's see if it works here. That'll take us to a list, right? A Wikipedia page, a list of California writers. So if you wanted to focus on somebody from, do they have the Central Valley here? Well, Bakersfield. What about San Joaquin? Stockton. Yeah, Stockton area. So, I'm going to click on that just for kicks. Maxine Hall and Kingston should be in there. Yeah, so there's a few. It's entirely up to you. Okay, so let's take a look at the specifics for this particular graphic essay. And I'm going to pull up a document here. All right. So, first thing, as with any essay, you're going to have an introduction. And with an introduction, you want to have some sort of hook, some sort of attention grabber. It could be a quote from the story or novel. That's the way I usually do one of these. All right, you have that. Then you'll have a few sentences of background information, and then your thesis. And your thesis is going to be basically your writer's contribution, right? What you think his or her contribution is to California, whether it be specifically his or her written words, right, the works, or some sort of social component, right? That's entirely up to you. Okay, so let's take a look at my sample here. Right, so I did my sample on John Steinbeck. Notice for my introduction, I did a quote. Highway 66 is the main migrant road, the long concrete path across the country, waving gently up and down the map, and across the desert to the mountains again, and into the rich California valleys. I thought that was a pretty cool way to begin this graphic essay. Since we're dealing with California, right, I thought, okay, well, I'll find a quote that kind of explains that. Some more background information about, so this is my connection here from this hook, this quote. Highway 66 was the main thoroughfare of the Okie migration to California. The migration was chronicled by novelist John Steinbeck. So as you can see, I'm slowly developing my topic. I'm kind of gradually going towards the topic. Not only did Steinbeck write about the people who made up the migration, I posted some of this in the first discussion, right? He actually lived with the migrant workers for a year or two, but he lived amongst them as well. As a result, Steinbeck got a first-hand look at the trials and tribulations these people endured as they sought refuge in the Golden State. This influenced Steinbeck to become an integral voice for the working class of California. And now we're getting to the thesis statement. John Steinbeck's contributions to California go well beyond its literature. So I'm letting my reader know that I'm going to focus beyond the written word. He established himself as a leader of social reform in California. Right, so there's my thesis. Okay, let's go back to the prompt. Next thing you're going to have is something called a rhetorical precis. It's kind of like a summary, but it's very specific. This one is only going to have 4 sentences. Your first sentence, okay, so let me back up a little bit here. You need a minimum of 2 sources. And one of your sources you are going to format like this. So my source was, I found an article. I hope it's still here. Ooh. Right here. An article called John Steinbeck on the Political Capacities of Everyday Folk. Moms, Reds, and Ma Jodes Revolt. All right. So that's the source that I chose to do from my rhetorical precis. Let's go back to the prompt. Sentence 1 is very specific, right? You're going to introduce the piece, the source. You got the author. Maybe you want a phrase. This would be a good time for a positive phrase to kind of explain who the author is. It's up to you. The type of, right? Is it an essay? Is it an article? Probably going to be an article. And the title. All right. Then you're going to have a verb, a reporting verb, right? Something like argues, explains, writes, and a clause, right? That you state the major assertion or the thesis statement, right? So this is the thesis. This is the main point of the source, right? So the thesis statement, not of your paper, but of this source that you used in your graphic essay. Sentence 2 is going to be a sentence that develops the thesis, right? That kind of explains, right? Not so many details, because remember, we only have 4 sentences, but kind of a general kind of, you're basically telling the reader how the writer went about their business. How do they support their thesis? Were they comparing and contrasting something, right? Were they defining something? Okay. And you want to do that in chronological order. Now, maybe I should post something about reading an academic article. I'm going to go back to the academic article, because if you choose, right, one of your sources, the first thing you want to read is the abstract. You can get a lot of information there. This basically tells you what these 24 pages are going to be like. Okay? So it's important to read the abstract. It'll save you time. Okay, sentence 3, you're going to say what the purpose is. Purpose is, right, why did the author, why did this critic or whatever create this source? And then number 4, you're going to focus on who it was written for. Could be a small audience, could be a large one, right? And maybe you'll talk about the tone, some of the rhetorical pieces, the rhetorical devices that the writer used, hence the name up here, rhetorical precis. Right, so let's take a look at my example. Right, in John Steinbeck on the Political Capacities of Everyday Folk, Moms, Reds, and Ma Jodes Revolt. Right, there's our author, Cyrus Ernesto Zeta argues, there's that reporting verb, that, there's the that clause, Steinbeck's political motives were less about converting America to communism than they were to tap into the spirit of the everyday person to elicit social reform. So a lot of people, especially a lot of libraries, a lot of people were burning The Grapes of Wrath when it came out. They accused Steinbeck of being a communist, right? A lot of people believe that. This writer here goes against that and says, no, he's not so much communist, right? But he had a specific kind of social reform. Okay. So remember, that second sentence kind of explains how the writer develops this. So take a look here. In his article, Zirazadek, I don't think I pronounced his name right, uses Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath as his chief vehicle to drive Steinbeck's political agenda to the forefront. Right now, I basically explained what that political agenda is in the same order that this guy, Z we'll call him, wrote it. 1, big business will never have the working class's needs as a priority. 2, social reform must start as it should be a grassroots movement or grounds root movement by the people who are affected. Communism, a lot of times they have transplants, right? People come in, stir a bunch of stuff up, start the reform. Steinbeck thought, no, it has to come from the people, right? The people of the Central Valley, people like the Jodes. Okay? 3, now this is a little bit different than communism here. Women must play a large role, but much of that role adheres to social gender norms. Right? He believed that women should be in charge of the domestic sphere, not that they should just stay in the kitchen. Right? They still have a say, but he didn't want women to relinquish that role. Okay, next sentence talks about audience, right? No, I'm sorry, purpose. Zirac Zada's purpose is to challenge conventional wisdom that Steinbeck was a communist. Right? That's what the thesis does there. And his primary audience are those who have a vested interest in Steinbeck. Right? So obviously, this article is Grapes of Wrath specific. Right? It's not going to be, nobody's going to go up one day and say, yeah, I think I'm going to read that for kicks. Okay, his audience are those who have a vested interest in Steinbeck. We mentioned that. And now we're going to talk about the structure, right? That last piece, talk about the tone structure. So his tone is one that will not alienate the reader. He doesn't use many emotive words, no highly charged words that might turn off people who believe this, right? That Steinbeck was a communist. He's trying to convince people that he wasn't. He practices sound argumentative strategy by raising conventional wisdom and refuting it with quotes from the book. All right. Next, okay, so that's the preces. Whoops. Okay. Now, the last two things on this page will be the big questions. You're going to have 3 big questions about your topic. So as you're reading about your writer, any questions that pop into your head, you could use. And your reasons are going to be your answers to those questions. Okay? So in a regular essay, this may take up 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs. But for our graphic essay, see it? We have our, our 3 big questions and our details. What factors led Steinbeck to champion his version of social reform, right? Why did he want to go against communism? Which of his works which of his works kind of present this ideology, right, for social reform? And are his works still widely read today? So after a little bit of research, you come up with your supporting details. So this one here will answer that, right, and so forth. So what factors? His mother had a huge influence because her involvement in the suffrage movement. Also, Steinbeck lived with the migrant farm workers for a number of years, right? So he saw the injustices and he wanted to change. Which of his works kind of present this? Well, The Grapes of Wrath and Of Mice and Men mostly, because they deal with the plight of the working class. Are his books still read? Yes. Steinbeck's works are still widely read. They are taught in high school and college, and they're still read in community reads. Okay, back to the prompt. I did have one more thing. Let's see. Oh, visual data. So I used Word. You can use PowerPoint. There's something called Canva. Maybe you're familiar with Google Slides. Anything you want to use. It doesn't matter. Okay, quick facts. I missed something. Let's go back to the essay. I forgot this section here. Awards and honors. Right, so Steinbeck had many. I chose these, the important ones. One of few American writers to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1962. He won the Pulitzer for Grapes of Wrath. He was awarded the United States Medal of Freedom. All right, so that's page 1. Side note here, when you begin this, there's probably an easier way to do this, but I just go with the text boxes. Let me erase this one. I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I'm on Word. I'm going up here to insert text box. I just go with the simple one, and then I draw as needed. So that first one was kind of like a rectangular piece, right? Something like that. It's up to you. You can delete it. You can type first, then add a background. It kind of changes it. But if you want to add the background, I go up here to shape fill, go to fill more colors, and create whatever you want. And say let's go home. We'll center it. Center, and I don't know, this could be, however you want to do it, but there you go. And then you would make another box here, right? Just like that. All right. So to finish up, right, you want to have some pictures and a little quick facts thing, and your works cited. So this is entirely up to you, but the last page will look, mine's backwards right now, but that's okay. Right, I got my pictures. I wanted to include kind of a younger Steinbeck with an older Steinbeck. This is the Nobel Prize for Literature, and I love this quote. Literature is as old as speech. It grew out of human need for it, and it has not changed except to become more needed. In a day and age where books are slowly, I'm not going to say dying out because they never will, but in an age where the medium, our dominant medium, is the screen, literature is very much so needed. Studies suggest that people who read fiction are more empathetic towards their fellow human beings. As I was creating this paper, it took longer than I thought because I found some articles that were really, really interesting. One of them talked about how reading literature is actually more beneficial than having a degree in sociology or psychology. Right? Because these novelists, they know about the human condition. Right? They know how to create these characters, right? And these characters are complex, and that's what makes a good writer. Anyway, so here's my works cited. I had 3 sources. There's my article, there's the Grapes of Wrath, and there's a couple of websites there, and my quick facts. Thought this was kind of funny. Whoops. An early draft of Steinbeck's novel was eaten by his dog. There's a Japanese translation called The Angry Raisins, and Steinbeck used 300 pencils to write East of Eden. So that's basically it. I hope you have fun, and I look forward to reading and seeing what you have visualized. Thank you.